everyone. Welcome to the session. This is Understanding the Unconscious Mind. Before we dive into it, I'm going to give you a brief intro on who I am. I'm Laima. I live in New York. I'm a product manager at a tech company, and I'm very interested in philosophy, psychology, all those types of things. As a result of that, I spent a couple of years understanding my own brain and figuring out what's going on in there and how that matches up to different aspects and topics in philosophy and psychology. So the session is largely about that journey and what the outcomes and benefits are and how it might apply to all of your lives. So first, we'll talk about the unconscious mind. What is it? Why does it matter? Why should you care? Then I'll talk about my journey in exploring my unconscious mind. After that, we'll talk about actionable methods that you all can take to also understand your minds. And then we'll talk about the benefits, again, just to wrap everything up. Okay, what is the unconscious mind? To answer that question, we have to go back to the 1900s when Sigmund Freud was alive. Freud was a neurologist who spent many years of his life researching patients with psych disorders and personality disorders. And while he was doing that, he was trying to figure out why the things in their minds was causing them to react in the way that they did. So what was going on? Try to psychoanalyze them. And he had hundreds of conversations with these patients. In doing so, he ended up developing a mental model of the way that the human mind works and how it affects our everyday lives and our everyday actions. This went on to become his theory of personality, which states that the human mind is like an iceberg. The top of the iceberg, above the water, is our conscious mind. Our conscious mind is responsible for everything that you unconsciously think of. So if you think about the fact that you're hungry, you're aware of it, you eat some food. You feel tired, you realize you're tired, you go to sleep. It's all the things that you internally can hear inside your minds. The part of the iceberg under the water is the unconscious mind, and it's a much greater size in proportion to our conscious mind. Our unconscious mind stores all of our past experiences, our judgments, our beliefs, our emotions, and why they became what they are through things like our childhood or our parents and the way that we grew up. Our conscious mind our unconscious mind, all those different thoughts and beliefs that are powerfully influenced by our past experiences, bubble up into our conscious mind. And that's how we end up doing things that we do or thinking the way that we do. It's all as a result of that primary source within you, which is your unconscious mind. It's not a two-way street though. So your conscious mind can't figure out in the day-to-day what's going on in your unconscious mind. You don't really actually know why you're doing what you do. You think you might know, but it's buried so deep within us that we can't actually figure it out if you just try to think about it with your conscious mind. To put this into perspective, our conscious mind controls 5% of our life, and our unconscious mind controls 95% of our life. So our past experiences, the way that we think, all of that is buried so deep within us, and that's what's actually making us do the things that we do. A lot of life that we go through, we're not as fully in control of as you might think that you are. But what if we are? What if you could access your unconscious mind? What if you could tap into it, figure out why you're actually thinking the way that you do, and understand that, and then see how it influences your conscious mind? And what if you could make changes in your unconscious mind, and as a result, change the way that you proceed through life in the day-to-day because of the work that you do? That's what the session is going to be about. To start, I'm going to give you a sneak preview of what the benefits might be, so that as we move through the session and figure out what methods you could do to tap into your unconscious mind, you'll remember what the benefits are, and maybe that'll help you feel more invested. So, does anyone know what movie this is from? Soul. Yeah, it's from the movie Soul, and what's going on is the main character is playing jazz, and he's in what the movie calls flow state. Flow state is when, as the movie describes, you're pretty much transformed into a different dimension. Time falls away, distractions disappear, you're in the state of pure bliss, mental peace, and happiness because it's just you and the present moment. And you feel so fully in sync with what you're doing and who you are and where you are that there's no negative thoughts or energy because you're not thinking about the future, you're not thinking about the past. It's just you in the moment enjoying life and being grateful for it. Imagine living every second of your day regardless of what you're doing, as if you're in flow state. In that state of mental peace and happiness and gratitude, without worrying about what's to come, worrying about what's going to happen, or what already happened, still able to manage your life, but from this state of happiness and peace and contentment. That's what it feels like when you tap into your unconscious mind and live life from that perspective. So remember this as we move through the session and talk about actionable methods to get there. To start, I'm going to talk about my journey and how all this stuff happened and how I even started thinking of it. So for me, it all starts back in college. In college, I took a computational psychology course, and this course essentially was trying to tell us how every single action, decision, or thought that we have can be explained neurologically. What that means is every thought or decision that we have or action that we do is a result of a sequence of neurons that fire in your brain. And the way those neurons organize themselves in their sequence is not something that we have conscious control over. They organize themselves based on the things stored in your unconscious mind. So what this is saying is we don't actually have control over the things we're thinking in our conscious mind. It's the way that the neurons are organizing themselves. Pretty much means that we don't have free will. So everything's predetermined, it's all going on in our brains and we can't actually control it. The things that actually do control it though are life factors. So like I mentioned, how did you grow up? What are your parents like? What's your current environment like? What are your friends like? What are the influences coming into you and your personality, storing themselves into your unconscious mind? And those are the things that subconsciously to you are creating and telling your neurons to organize themselves in the way that they do, and then fire to give you your conscious thought or action, and then comes into your mind that you act on. So what we were doing in this class was pretty much using probability. We were using probability theorems to figure out how we would take these different life factors and understand if I have a certain amount of probability with, for example, my childhood and a certain amount of probability with my current environment, then the combination of that probability will result in me doing this action or me doing this thought. And we could do that to predict other people's actions and other people's thoughts also. So for example, if I did these probability theorems and knew enough about your life, if I knew how you grew up, about your parents, what your current environment is, I probably could have predicted to 95% accuracy that you would attend YJA before you even knew you were going to attend YJA. Which is a little bit scary when you think about it, but it's also really cool. But it's also really scary. So most of the kids in this class, we're just going through and doing these probability theorems and trying to predict things. Meanwhile, I was sitting in a corner and I was kind of having a very big existential crisis. So I was like, what do you mean it's not actually me that's making my choices? What's the point of my life if it's not me? And why does it even matter if I'm just doing what life is telling me to do? I spent a lot of time that semester asking myself these questions, wondering what the meaning of life was, who was I underneath everything, and why did it matter? To figure out these questions and what the answers were, I ended up reverse engineering myself a little bit. So I would take any conscious thought or action that happened in my brain and try to backtrack, try to dissect it to figure out what it was stemming from and where it was coming from. Pretty much, what factors were causing me to think the way that I did and be the person that I was. I would try to get from point B and backtrack all the way through whatever was going on in my brain and unravel it through my past experiences, all the way into my unconscious mind, and try to find out whatever the root cause was, which there's a lot of stuff that goes on in there. For example, if this was point A, and it was I'm annoyed at my friend because my friend was late by 20 minutes for lunch, I would ask myself, okay, wait, why am I annoyed? And then I would be like, I'm annoyed because this is wasting 20 minutes of my time. And then I would say, okay, why does that matter? And it matters because I would think, well, my time is valuable, it shouldn't be wasted. And then I would think, why do I think that my time is valuable? It is, but why do I think that? And the answer, the root cause within my unconscious mind is actually just ego, which is point B. It's coming from the thought that I think that my time is more valuable regardless of what was going on with my friend that caused her to be late. I was just thinking, I'm sitting here and I'm late and so I'm annoyed. And instead, what I could have been doing was just sitting there waiting, but just enjoying life. I'm 20 minutes late, I had other things I could do. There was no point in me getting annoyed. So when I finally got to point B, to realizing it was just my ego speaking out, I realized me spending those 20 minutes annoyed was so much more negative and detrimental than letting it not faze me. To understand, okay, she's 20 minutes late, and then let that thought pass away, because there's no control I have over it. And so I was doing this so often, trying to go from point A to point B, that as I did, I finally got to my unconscious mind. I actually tapped into it, and what that felt like was flow state. It was all the things the movie described. The bliss, the happiness, the gratitude, the peace, in sync with the present moment, because now I'm not thinking of the future, I'm not thinking of the past, I'm not thinking of myself. It was just pure flow in my day-to-day life. After college, I've been doing this less. In college, I would do it at least once every week. I would practice it very, very strongly because of how valuable I saw that it was for my life. It was transformative in changing the way that I thought, the way that I approached my future decisions, the way that I wanted to shape my life. And so even though in college, it would be short amounts of time where I would tap into my unconscious mind, it would only last for a couple hours, maybe a day if I was lucky. But because I was in college, I had homework and I had tests, and that would make my conscious mind win out over my unconscious mind. Now, post-college, it's even less because I have less time to spend doing this practice every week to even tap into my unconscious mind. So since it's once every few months now, it also became harder because now I'm less familiar with my thought patterns. In college, I was thinking about myself and what was going on in my brain so often that I kind of vaguely knew what things was going on and what I should follow. Now, since I'm doing it every couple months, new thought patterns form in my head, so I have to refamiliarize myself with those thought patterns, and then get to the process of trying to backtrack and figure out where they're coming from, and then make it to my unconscious mind. And to do this, that means I have to set aside full day, like 3 to 4 full days of solitude, just to get through this whole process and actually understand my brain again, which became too much time, and I didn't have that time anymore, especially living in New York where there's things going on every single day. So then about 6-7 months ago, I started thinking, what else is there? Is there a more known method that I can take to get me here? I know of a lot of people that have experienced this already. I've read a lot of things that other people are doing. What else could I do that would be faster for me? And that's what brought me to Vipassana. Vipassana is a 10-day silent meditation retreat. No phones, no technology, no nothing. It's just you and your thoughts for 10 full days. The point of it is to become more attuned with how your body affects your mind and how your mind affects your body. It doesn't support any religion, but it does stem from Buddhist teachings. I'm not going to get too far into my experience because it's so different for everyone. Vipassana is something where whatever's deep within you, it's going to come out, and so me telling you a lot about mine might set expectations for your experience when you go, if you go do it, which you should. So I won't go into too much detail, but I will tell you what happened to my brain throughout the process. So the first few days did not go well. It is very hard to go from real life to having nothing besides your mind and not having your phone anymore. We also were waking up at 4 a.m. and it was just meditating a lot. It's 1 meal a day. And so I think my body was just like, what is going on? And as a result, my thoughts were going in very random directions. I'd go off on tangents, I wouldn't really be meditating correctly. It was just thinking of everything that I could possibly think of to distract itself from the fact that this was painful physically and mentally and just taxing. But by the 5th day, there was a turning point. So at this point, my mind had thought through everything it could possibly think through. Like, there was literally nothing left for it to think of. And so now I still couldn't control it going off in random directions, but I became bored of following it go down these directions because I'd already been doing it so much. So the pathways were still going on in my mind of just random thoughts and tangents, but now my conscious mind wasn't traveling along with those. Instead, it was bored, and so it was like, I'll just watch you go down these instead of also following it with you. It took the role of the observer. And the reason it could do this was because it finally had nothing to say. When my conscious mind stopped talking, the internal mental chatter stopped, And as a result, it could fully just observe what pathways my mind was going down. As I was observing, I realized that a lot of these random pathways and thoughts were formed in my unconscious mind, and that's where they were stemming from. And that's why I kept traveling down them without even realizing. By the 8th day, it began to get really cool because I'd observed my mind so much, the mental chatter had stopped, I'd become so familiar with my pathways that now I could see the pathways forming and I could change them. I could take all these negative pathways that were coming up from my past experiences or my whatever was going on, things that were causing stress or causing anxiety that I didn't even realize, things that I was holding on to, and I could just understand what it was going to lead to and change it before it even happened. Essentially, those neurons that I was talking about, where I thought I had no control over the sequence they would organize themselves in, now, before that happened, I could logically see why they would result in whatever thought or action, why they would go in that sequence, and before they did, I could change it and go down a different pathway. This allowed me to get so much familiarity with my mind that I was able to master control of my unconscious mind. And as a result of that, I could change deep beliefs that I had stored within myself and rewrite over pathways. Think about things that you don't even know are core to your being. I finally understood what those things were, and then I could change them. Vipassana was very, very helpful in this. It raised the baseline of my unconscious mind. So what I mean by that is, like I mentioned, whatever negative pathways there are, anytime you're stressed, anytime you're anxious, there's a test and you really don't want to take it. Those are negative pathways that are stemming from your unconscious mind. But by raising the baseline of my unconscious mind, those negative pathways, I could just cut them out entirely. And instead, now it's, okay, I have this test, I know I'm going to take it. It's going to be fine. And that makes me approach life now from the perspective of gratitude, appreciating the beauty of life and the beauty of each moment, happiness, just enjoying where I am and what I'm doing. And it's not even coming from me. It's not prompts from my conscious mind reminding me to do this. It's coming from my unconscious mind. So I don't even have to try for these things. Sometimes. Obviously my conscious mind takes over control, sometimes still. But my unconscious mind itself has gotten so much healthier through this experience. So to tie this section together, the steps that I took for my college semester when I was taking the computational psychology class and Vipassana were the same. The 3 steps are: first, develop control over your conscious mind. Stop the internal mental chatter of thoughts that are always streaming in there. Second, observe your unconscious mind. Become so familiar with the thought patterns and the way that you think without reacting, without doing anything, just observe them. And then third, control your unconscious mind. Finally, when you're that familiar, you can begin to change them and create deep and lasting changes within yourself. Vipassana was definitely a high-dose way to do it, and it created changes in me that my college classes couldn't do. Because in college, like I mentioned, my conscious mind would still take over here and there. I was still doing life, so anytime I had to do homework, anytime I had to take a test, the connection to my unconscious mind went away, and I went straight back to my conscious mind. But Vipassana gave me 10 full days of solitude to dive deep within my brain, figure out what was going on, and change it without any interruptions. It's an experience that I would highly recommend, very transformative. If you're interested, come talk to me after the session. Small plug, it's free. The room, the board, the food, everything for the full 10 days is paid for, and it's fully funded by previous donors. You actually can't even donate unless you've taken the course in the past. And the reason they're still able to do this is because anyone that goes through it sees the benefits, and so we're just like, here, take my money, let's try to pass this on to whoever else might want to do it. So again, if you're interested, I can give you more details about the program I went to. Come talk to me. Okay, now we'll talk about actionable methods that you might be able to take in your daily life to achieve the same results of tapping into your unconscious mind. Vipassana was just one way to do it. There's so many out there. For example, breathing techniques. A couple of you, or a lot of you, I don't know, you might have tried some meditation apps to manage anxiety, stress, emotions as you go through day-to-day life. These techniques, interestingly enough, are based on gaining control over your conscious mind first. They try to get you to stop the internal flow of thoughts and that stream that's going on in your head through breathing. And after you can do that, then you can move on to steps 2 and 3. One of the techniques that I really like, it comes from Wim Hof, who's known as the Iceman. He does extreme body temperature activities, things like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in shorts or running a half marathon above the Arctic Circle barefoot. How does he do this? Well, he says, it's a common belief that only a small percentage of our brain is used for conscious thinking, which we talked about. It's really only 5%. The other, larger part of our brain is used for deeper processes that control all kinds of bodily functions. So here, we also talked about how the unconscious mind controls the involuntary functions in your body, things like digestion or your body temperature. And then he says, being able to willfully influence this large subconscious part gives us the power to take control over our bodies in ways that were previously thought to be impossible. What this means, and what he's talking about, is tapping into his unconscious mind and controlling it to regulate his body temperature. None of us can currently regulate our body temperatures like that. And he's uncovered how to dig deep, figure out how to control his unconscious mind in that way, and literally change the involuntary functions of his body to meet whatever he wants to do. An example, he did the Iceman experiment, in which he submerged his body in ice water for a long amount of time. And while he was doing this, he had his brain activity recorded. What was shown was that his prefrontal cortex, the conscious part of his mind, remained inactive. For us, that part would have been very active, telling us that it's cold and to get out of the water as quickly as we can. Instead, his unconscious mind was active. These regions of his brain were lit up. It was lit up because he was tapping into his unconscious mind to regulate his body temperature. And as a result, he could resist the cold water and stay warm for over 30 minutes or 40 minutes, and it was below freezing water, and he came out of it still fine. The cool part is, the way that he does this, the way that he taps into his unconscious mind, is all through his breathing technique. That's all he does, and that's how he gets there. If any of y'all are interested, he has an app called the Wim Hof Method app, in which he actually guides you through these breathing activities. Exactly what he does is what he guides you through on this app, and it's an app that I use. It's really cool. We'll actually do some of the exercise now. The full exercise is 11 minutes. We're only going to do 2 minutes of it, but as we do it, a quick preview. The first 30 seconds will just be normal breathing. Then you'll go into a minute of holding your breath. As the breath that you hold is actually going to be, you're going to let go of your last breath and then hold your breath. And then you're going to take a breath in and hold that for 15 seconds. As you do this, I want you to think about just step 1. Control your conscious mind and try to stop the internal flow of thoughts going through it. Your mind will scream at you, asking you to breathe, telling you you need to breathe. Try to stop that and not breathe, but obviously if you have to breathe, then you can breathe.
Here we go. Round number 1. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Just go with the flow of the breath. In, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, into the belly, into the chest, and let go. Like a wave. Make it circular. Fully in and letting go. Just keep on going. No pause between inhalation and exhalation. Ten more. Fully in, let it go. 5 more. Let's give it all we got. Last one. Fully in. And let go. All right. 1 minute breath hold from now on. Be in this moment. Let the body do what the body is capable of doing. Be aware of your heartbeat. Slow it down and just be in this moment. Let that relaxation spread down to your toes, into your fingertips, to the base of your neck and head. You are almost there. Do you want to prolong your breath hold? Pause the video now and continue when you feel the urge to breathe. Okay, recovery breath in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take a deep breath in and hold for 15 seconds. Exhale in 3, 2, 1. Let it go.
How did y'all feel? Did anyone hold your breath for the full minute? No. We got some people. Did you see what I meant about trying to control your conscious mind to fast it? Awesome. Okay, so again, Wim Hof app, doing this often and practicing it will help you get all the way yet. So,
He has things like to take cold showers and stuff.
yeah, exactly. Again, just shocking your body so that you can move past your conscious mind to dig deeper into your unconscious mind. Practicing this regularly can definitely get you to the spot where you're tapping into your unconscious mind and then just honestly becoming almost superhuman, either mentally or physically or whatever it is that you want to do. Okay, so I've been talking a lot about tapping into the unconscious mind. Take a step back. A lot of questions that people ask are, how common is this? How many people do this? Are they getting the same experiences? What is really going on here? Dr. Andrew Newberg had the same questions. So he went and found groups of people that were talking about the same experience of feeling gratitude, bliss, happiness when they went deeper into their minds, or just when they would just feel it in everyday life, or whoever was talking about this experience in this way, where it sounded like they were talking about the same thing, he would go and try to seek them out. So he went and found people in prayer groups and meditation groups and found nuns, Buddhist monks for spiritual experience groups. He went to shamans and different people that might have taken psychedelics too in a certain way where they were using it to get to a spot where they could figure out their ego. And regular people just like me who are like, who am I? What's my identity? What do I do? That we're talking about these same experiences, and he took brain scans of all of them to see what was happening. And interestingly enough, what he found was the middle part of the brain, the conscious mind, was dimmed to varying degrees in all of these groups, and the outer regions, the unconscious mind, were lit up to varying degrees. Pretty much saying that religion, spirituality, meditation, breathing, just thinking about yourself, all of these things can get you to the same result of tapping into your unconscious mind and can get you to that same experience that we're talking about. That sense of being in flow, of happiness and peace in life. So, let's talk about religion as one of the examples. In Jainism, we have a whole bunch of festivals, rituals, some of which I've listed out here. We're going to talk about Orishan, and about how actually any of these festivals or rituals, what they try to do is get you to go down these 3 steps. To first control your conscious mind, to then observe your unconscious mind, figure out what negative qualities are in there, and then be able to control those negative qualities, to take them out at the root and eradicate them or destroy them. So like I mentioned, we're going to start with Varisha. In Jainism, we say that the purpose of life is to realize oneself, to understand what our true soul is underneath all of the stored experiences, things that we've built up, all of our pathways that we have in our brain. What is our true self untouched by any of this? Any of that karma, there's a soul within there, or You don't want to like think about the word soul. There's a self in there of you guys underneath all of this stuff that makes you who you are. So the purpose of life in Jainism is to figure out who that is and feel it and experience it. The purpose of Paryushan aligns with that. And the goal of Paryushan is to purify our soul. Again, to figure out who that true self is within you. The way that they say we're supposed to do this in Paryushan is by observing and correcting our own faults. Observing, step 2, observe your unconscious mind and figure out what those faults are. Correct your own faults, step 3, change what's in your unconscious mind and actually correct what's going in there by eradicating those faults. So, also like you mentioned, fasting is so important during Paryushan because it teaches you how to control your conscious mind. That step 1 is so hard to do without some forced repetition of difficulty to your body. And when you put your body through that, it teaches you how to stop the flow of thoughts in your mind and ignore it. Also, you might just get so bored of continuing to go down that path that you'll be like, no, I don't want to anymore. So this teaches you how to control your conscious mind. Paryushan's not just physical with fasting, it's mental. You actually have to not let your mind go down those harmful paths of still thinking about food and hunger and control yourself to move past it. But the true way to do Paryushan is fasting and contemplation. You can't do one without the other, especially for contemplation. If you just fast but don't contemplate, you won't get to the point where you're realizing what your true soul is or who your true self is. So you need both, and contemplation can get you to step 2, observing your unconscious mind to figure out who you are underneath all this stuff. So step 2 we can talk about with Samayik. Samayik is 48 minutes of daily meditation, and the point of it is to remain in equanimity during our life. That means that as you do Samayik, what you're really doing is hearing all the thoughts in your unconscious mind and then not reacting to them. First, hopefully you've done step 1 through fasting, so you have good control over your conscious mind. But then now number 2, when you see what's going on in your mind, are you able to not react and not be like, oh, I did this, but honestly, I felt like this about that. Not reacting is key to remain equanimous, and if you practice that daily through Samayik, then it helps you in your whole life to keep that mental state when you're not doing your Samayik. Samayik is something you're supposed to do every day during Paryushan because that combined with fasting is what helps you achieve step number 2. So, as you do your Samayik, what you might realize actually is that a lot of those pathways in your brain have a root cause in the 4 Kashayas. Anger, ego, deception, greed, all these things are so ingrained with us that it's said that every decision, every action, every thought that we have is actually rooted in these 4 passions. And so as you try to follow your conscious thoughts into your unconscious mind, you'll see that these 4 passions are the things that are causing them. And so during Samayik, you can follow these, fully understand your unconscious mind, see what levels of each passion you have within you, and just observe. As you do Samayik, the point is just observe and don't react to it. And then for step number 3, controlling your unconscious mind, that comes out during Pratikraman, like you were talking about. So Pratikraman is to reflect, review, and ask forgiveness for one's faults of mind, body, and speech. To reflect means to think about, okay, what actions and thoughts did I actually do in the past however much time period? Think about all the things that you did and actually reflect to figure out, okay, what was good, what was bad, who am I, what did I do type of thoughts should be going through your brain. To review means to figure out, okay, where did this stem from? How bad was this? Is this something that came from my ego? Or is this something that was an external factor? What actually happened? What are the misdeeds that I might have done, unintentional or intentional? Think about your life, think about how you are and who you are, and actually review and reflect what you've done during Pratikraman. If we could understand what the sutras and stavans were saying, this is it. Unfortunately, we can't. Well, I can't because I don't know the language as well, but as a result, my mind goes off in different directions. Come back to this point and realize that you're supposed to review and reflect on your misdeeds, unintentional or intentional. And afterwards, you ask for forgiveness. Asking for forgiveness means truly repenting and letting go. At this point, you've reviewed whatever actions you've done, and then you've figured out what the root cause was. You figured out if it came from anger, ego, deceit, greed, and then to truly ask for forgiveness means you've gone into your unconscious mind, found that root cause, and destroyed it, eradicated it, truly let it go. So now, it's not even a thought in your brain anymore. These are the pathways that you're supposed to destroy during pratikama. And when you do that, that's when you've actually controlled your unconscious mind. Because now you've gone deep within, taken out the root negative pathways, taken out those 4 passions, anger, ego, deceit, greed, and asked for forgiveness. These are how the rituals and practices, festivals in Jainism are supposed to go. We're supposed to use these to control our conscious mind, stop the internal chatter, observe your unconscious mind, figure out what those pathways are and how they're rooted in our 4 kashais, or the 4 passions. And lastly, truly ask for forgiveness. Get them out of your unconscious mind if you can. Root them out and destroy them. So like we mentioned, religion is another way to get there. In Jainism especially, all of these, if you think deeply enough about how they relate to these 3 steps, you'll understand how it's meant to get you to your unconscious mind and tap into it to become your true self and your true soul. Next time you're doing anything related to Jainism, even in the rest of these sessions, as you think about it, figure out how they relate to being the core of who you are. Underneath all the emotions, the judgments, the beliefs, whoever you think you are, try to take that out of your mind and figure out what the truest form of yourself might be, because that truest form should be the same as every person that you're sitting next to. The truest form of us is one pure soul, and that should be the same for all of us. So keep thinking about that when you think of what the essence of Jainism is. Because when you think of it that way, and truly eradicate all of the passions in your brain, in a sense where it's done with such intensity that you've changed your mind permanently, fully and permanently. Now your conscious thoughts have merged with your unconscious thoughts, and you are just that true sense of a soul. Instead of you being one person, you're just one soul who is now everyone. You're enlightened. And all it took was controlling your unconscious mind to the sense where you removed all those passions. That's what God is in Jainism. Jina is the same thing as Tirthankar, Arihant, God. These are all names for God. And what Jina means is destroyer over inner passions. Your anger, your ego, your deceit, your greed, which is what we just talked about. Those things that you have to get out of your unconscious mind, if you can destroy these so fully and permanently that it also becomes your conscious mind, that's what being God in Jainism is. And Jainism says that we all actually have the potential to be God. We all can get there. Our souls are on that path. In this lifetime, it's very hard to change our minds permanently to actually get to that level. But if you research the 14 Gunasthanas, we actually can get to very, very high levels. We can briefly glimpse almost what it feels like to be God, to feel that true sense of a soul and that true sense of a self. We can feel it and glimpse it for short amounts of time. And the way to do this is to take control over your unconscious mind. Get through all these 3 steps, destroy your passions, even for a small amount of time, and you'll feel like what it is to almost be that true sense and true version of yourself. And many people feel this. It's written all over history, it's written in a bunch of different religions, it's the same across all of us. Plato says, contemplation of the way things really are is a purifying process that can bring human beings into the divinity that there is. What he's talking about is how contemplation can help you figure out your brain to get you to the truest sense of your soul. There are different methods. So we talked about Vipassana, we talked about religion, we talked about breathing techniques. I will very briefly go into 2 more methods, and then we'll talk about the outcomes. So one of the methods is suffering. Something like losing a loved one, going through a breakup, failing a class, failing out of college, hitting rock bottom. These things essentially break you out of your loop. They make you reconcile your conscious mind with your unconscious mind, because now you're like, what just happened? There's no more thoughts that your conscious mind can follow, so you're just like, who am I? How did this happen? What do I do now? And you're forming new patterns in your unconscious mind to try to figure out what's happening within your life. So suffering is actually pretty transformative. Obviously, it's not great in the moment, but while you're suffering, if you do contemplation, if you try to figure out why it is you feel the way that you do, what is going on, was it your fault or was it not your fault? But are there passions within you that you can root out and eradicate? if you're able to get to that and figure out why the suffering is even causing you suffering, you'll have tapped into your unconscious mind. When you tap into your unconscious mind, again, the benefits are transformative, life-changing. People glimpse what it feels like to have that feeling of bliss, being fully in the present, gratitude, and then they reshape their whole lives. People go on meditation retreats and then come back and are a completely different person because they've glimpsed what it is within their minds, and then they cater their whole lives around being that person that they found out that they were. Another example is dissociative experiences. For example, ketamine is now being explored as a mental health therapy because what it does is it disassociates your conscious mind from your unconscious mind. It stops the flow of mental chatter in your brain, and that allows you to go deeper and dig into your unconscious mind, observe what's there, and then it helps establish neuroplasticity and promotes it. So you can start rewriting over your unconscious mind and changing the neural pathways that are there. It starts with disassociating yourself from who you think you are. Get rid of the ego, and then you can dig deeper to see what's happening. Okay, we've talked about a lot of different methods. To tie this section together, tap into your unconscious mind. The way to get there: first, control your conscious mind. Second, observe your unconscious mind. And third, control your unconscious mind. All of these things can get you there. Whatever it is that might sound like it could be helpful or resonate with you, start exploring it and trying to figure out what the next part of the process is. Outcomes. I've talked a lot about the benefits already. Now I'll go into some of the outcomes. In this section, I'll talk about why going through these experiences and tapping into your unconscious mind can get rid of anxiety, of stress, of indecision. Part of this is just being fully present in the moment, but there's more to it. It changes your perception of life and reality, and that changed perception of reality is what then results in not really having anxiety or stress about the future or past. So that's what I'm going to get into. It's a little bit of a complex topic, so try to pay attention and follow along, and if something doesn't make sense, then just raise your hand and let me know. Okay, we're going to talk about time. So time is something that exists for us, but doesn't exist outside of us. What I mean by that is, Lex Friedman, a researcher at MIT, puts it in terms of light. He says, pretty much, if I'm at point A on Earth and I'm trying to travel to point B, and it takes an hour for me to do that, that's my whole journey, the span of an hour. But if I'm traveling at the speed of light, then it all happens in a single instance, just one moment. So point A, point B, and that whole hour in between happened at a single moment in time. The start, the end, and the journey all happened at once. That's what my perception of time is when I tap into my unconscious mind. Past, present, and future, it's all happening at once, which means I can't be worried about the past, can't be worried about the future. I'm just living in the present, but not from the sense of, let me just enjoy my present and not worry. More of in the sense that everything is happening at once, and the moment itself is so perfect because it contains all of time within itself. If you've seen movies like Interstellar, Arrival, Tenet, everything, everywhere, all at once, what these movies are trying to say is this perception of time. The characters realize that past, present, and future are happening all at once, and they don't need to move through time linearly. Instead, they realize that it's all happening, and they just need to figure out how to work time in the way that they need in a present moment, and realize that all the external conditions, the control, it doesn't matter anymore. When I'm tapped into my unconscious mind, time doesn't exist. It's a construct that's given by our conscious mind so that we can operate in daily life. So when I'm back into my conscious mind, the guardrails come back up. A lot of this might not make sense, and I realize why it won't make sense because there's structures in place in our conscious mind that there's no way for you to perceive what time would be without those there. However, if you can get to a place where you can tap into your unconscious mind, all those structures and guardrails fall away, and you can feel what it is to experience truth or bliss, the things they talk about in religion. In Jainism, time doesn't exist. All those things are there when you tap into your unconscious mind. Alvin Watts, a famous philosopher, said, He realizes that the past and future are illusions, and all they are just existing in the present. They all come together at this singular moment in time, and that's all there is, and that's all there ever will be. Why is this important, and why am I bringing up time? Because of the effects. When you realize that there's a path laid out for your future, and the past has already happened and is still happening, and it doesn't really matter, you let go of control. External factors that you can't control, even internal factors that maybe it's not worth it to control because of the mental anxiety it'll give you. You give those up so easily. Time doesn't matter, and you are going to go down the path that you will go down regardless, and it will be great. Which means now you're in a state of happiness. You're enjoying the ride, enjoying the journey, and living life in the best way possible, enjoying everything you do. It is pure bliss. The benefits of tapping into this part of your mind and feeling what this could be like is transformative. Because after you live life like this, why would you want to live life with anxiety and stress anymore? The other cool part about what happens is the intuition. Because time works this way, there's a path that's already laid out. And when I'm tapped into my unconscious mind, that path becomes clearer to me. The path that I should go down or what I should follow, my intuition is stronger. It's how Sadhguru puts it. The nature of life is such that if you unblock it and allow it to flow, allow life to flow through you, then you figure out which direction and which path you're going to go in. Your gut feeling actually makes sense when you're in your unconscious mind, and there's no anxiety, stress, or doubt about which path or which route you should take. You're not torn between a bunch of different options and not knowing if you're going to make the right one because you have clear intuition and a clear gut feeling. If you research in different religions, if you research spirituality, research philosophy, all of them talk about this intuition that helped them get to where they are. An analogy that hopefully makes it make a little bit more sense. Harry Potter. So in Harry Potter, he took a lucky potion called Felix Felicis, and essentially this helped him get to whatever outcome he wanted to get to. The cool part about this is the way that he describes it is that he just has a gut feeling of what he should do. The magical potion lets him figure out what path to take and gives him a gut feeling or a nudge in the right direction. There's infinite possibilities for every situation, and this magical potion is what would tell him which path to go down to get to the outcome that he was going to get to. That's what it feels like when you tap into your unconscious mind. You have a gut feeling or an intuition about the path that you are going to take to figure out how you're going to follow the path in your life. So again, figure out how to tap into your unconscious mind. We went through so many examples of what you could do to do it. The benefits will transform the way you think, the way you act, and it'll be so apparent how the rest of your life plays out in a way that's so beneficial if you're able to realize what you're supposed to do, what your mind wants you to do to actually get you to where you're going to be, instead of still getting there. You're still going to get from point A to point B, but you could either go through a bunch of mental uncertainty to get there, or you could get there in a single straight line with happiness. The last thing I'll leave you with is the list of greatest minds of all time. This is a list compiled by Ranker.com. And as you dig through the list, it's a whole bunch of what they rank as geniuses. People like Einstein, Da Vinci, Socrates, they all talk about how they received information while in deep meditative states. Steve Jobs attributes much of his success and the transformation of Apple to his practice of Zen meditation. All of these greatest minds were tapping into their unconscious mind to figure out radical truths about the world and the universe, to understand more than what else or what could ever come up in our conscious minds. And once they did that, they were able to clearly find the path that they needed to follow to successfully communicate the findings outwards. Action items. Try to go through these 3 steps. Figure out whatever resonated with you. Go through breathing techniques, rituals, Vipassana, understand your thoughts. Even just get to step 1 where you can control your conscious mind, and I promise you it will be beneficial. It will help you figure out how to understand your mind better, how you should move forward, and what your future can look like in a way where you're actually creating your future instead life gives the future to you. When you try to do this, whether it's for success, whether it's for finding happiness, finding a more peaceful life, or uncovering the secrets of your universe, whatever it may be, it all lies within your mind. I cannot stress enough, figuring out how to control your unconscious mind will give you powers, mental, physical, whatever it may be, in ways that you wouldn't have even thought were possible. Okay. That's all I have.